a lot of different projects happening right now. And one of them, Net City, or self-sustained city built by Tencent in China. City for 88,000 people from 1 floor to 130 floors with underground transportation and no cars and no road. Imagine to get to the city when you don't have to spend time in traffic to get to the work or from work, when you get in a couple of minutes to your location, your park or your home, and you use this elevator to get to your floor, and you don't have to touch any surfaces, will be like touchless technology. And imagine like living in this city comparable to cities we live in right now. I'm sure pre-COVID time and after COVID time will be totally different design in future architect for future cities. Mary was involved in this amazing project for Uber Air, flying cars, and touchless technology as well. Tell us about it. What you guys did?
It's still in concept phase from what I understand. And so we were asked to essentially design for Uber Air.
Interesting, yes.
And
it's like concept car, but now this is concept building designs.
Exactly.
For Uber. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that was the purpose of our building, was to have a multi-mobility use space where people can work, how they get to work, how they leave work. We wanted to have a restaurant in there. We wanted to, we wanted to have this building to be more than just an office building like it was designed to do. The cool thing about the Lever House is it is designed with a pavilion. So it essentially looks like an L, like for the Lever House, right?
Yeah.
And it has a ton of open air where that pavilion is, which makes it a perfect air real estate, which is, for the Uber to fly in and to land in the center of the building because it has all that open space. A lot of realtors and brokers, and they're in New York City fighting for this real estate because it is air real estate that is so special. That's what makes Park Avenue special in that moment. It's because you have all that light coming through.
Interesting.
And the thing is, if we sell it to them and they make all this money and they build the towers, we're going to lose that.
Yeah.
So how can we utilize that airspace in such a way that leaves it there, first of all, and incorporates a new way of living, a new future for us?
That's very interesting.
So that's what we did, is we created that space to have the Uber Air, land in the center of the building. And when you enter the building from the center of the building and not from the ground floor going up, what does that feel like?
Yeah.
It's a very different feeling, and it's a very different atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea to think about how one enters the building and experiences the building from the middle instead of from the bottom up, like we're used to. And maybe that's like pushing what the future is going to be like. You're not going to enter at the top, are you? Many do with helicopters now, right? But what does it feel like to enter from the middle, and what does that middle space look like? So we created a park. We created a park in the middle of the building. So you enter into a park.
That's amazing. That's actually that's exactly the same thing what Tencent's doing. Let's talk about architectural optimism. What does it means, architectural optimism?
What is architecture? What is a chair? What is a bathroom? There's all these. When you're born, our life is already designed for you.
Okay.
And so you are just placed into this space, and you learn how to do the basic needs because your life is designed for you. Your chairs, your tables, you're basically just learning how to live, right? But how do we live differently, and how can we push that boundary? Why does a chair have to look like a chair? Why can't it look like something else? So architecture of what would you say, architectural optimism? It's basically a responsibility that we carry as designers to constantly push the boundaries of what could be.
Interesting.
Of what could be, because people who don't practice conceptual thinking and abstract thinking, and it's not, some people just don't have that mind, right? So when you are forced to live in this world for 4 years or 5 years of school, or if you go to grad school another 2 years, you're constantly practicing how to think like this. So then when you come out into the real world, you're like, that's a chair. Like, what? Why is that chair the way, And so you are able to then design in such a way that people that don't experience that way of thinking are blown away. And that is, I think, going back to the educational system, I think that practice should be incorporated from little kids.
If you want to think about future humanity, to change it to a better future, we need to start with kids, and we have to change the school system. For example, kids got different tools, and teachers tell them, go ahead, create something with those tools, and this is materials and stuff. And for example, like Elon Musk, he is in his school, he provides for kids like full engine and tools, and tell for kids, okay, let's put it apart, this engine, and see how is this working. I think it's a better way to teach kids and better way for education, to show them what is already created, what this creation is, what humanity achieved already, and then get them to the next level, second level of creation. And I think that's going to be needed and change this world. And also I'm thinking the old world and new world will be such divided, because think about it, like only 30 years ago we don't have any computers, we don't have internet. And right now we have AI technology and flying cars soon. Thinking about what's going to be happening in the future. And we have to adapt to this new common world.
Exciting to me. It's not really accepting, it's more of adapting, I would say. You have to make a choice whether you want to adapt or whether you don't want to adapt.
Everybody wants to have healthy living, right? We don't have pollution. Humans tend to live longer and healthier. Would you agree with me? When you design a city, you design with transportation. A lot of cars and traffic. That's why we have those problems with traffic. And interestingly enough, it's Elon Musk again. His mastermind was, and I think his brilliant idea was to have this boring company to build underground transportation and connections between different parts of the city. And when you get from the ground to the top, you can pretty much walk everywhere. So, and maybe in the future, when we get this developed, we don't have any cars. We just gonna be adapt to the new lifestyle and new normals.
I think you can think about transportation in a few different ways. If you think about it as a diagram, you can think about levels, right? Like you have your ground level, then you have your underground level, then above the ground level, you have the air level.
Yeah.
So if you divide it like that, and how much transportation is going where, like if 80% is going to be underground, how much is left for the rest?
Yeah.
So that's how I'm thinking about it. And I think every city is going to vary because there's more people in more cities or vice versa, right? So I think with Uber Air and with traveling in the air and how that's going to look like, I think that's definitely going to happen. And I don't know how they're going to divide the air, because that's a question,
Yeah.
right? But I was looking at the other day of what the streets are going to look like in the future and how the sidewalks are going to change. And it was basically like two lanes in the middle, two more lanes out here and two more lanes out there. But the only middle lane is for like buses and like maybe one or two cars. But then you have pedestrian traffic for scooters, bikes, maybe air cars. Maybe that's where they fly, in those lanes. And then the other two lanes. So like, what is the sidewalk going to look like? It's not going to be the same anymore. It's not going to be 3 feet or 4 feet or whatever it is.
Interesting.
So, you have to change the lanes, right?
Pretty much the obvious equations, what to do with those old cities. Rebuild or redesign, or demolish everything and build it from scratch. What are your thoughts about that?
I think to reuse is a better word instead of to build new. It's always smarter, in my opinion, to reuse, because I went for interior architecture, right? I didn't go for like new construction. Mm-hmm. I like to take what's existing, consider it as a shell, and go inside and make it so that it can withstand years and years of time. Not like back in the day when they made the Lever House. It was for what, 50 years?
Yeah.
And now it's just vacant and nobody's using it because it's not being able to stay adapt with the times. So we need to create buildings and cities and futures that are able to adapt over time.
I think those older cities will become museums because they have narrow streets and they're not really usable for have like flying cars, bicycles to ride. So we don't have enough place there, and this is just probably will become too good enough just for tourist attractions, just to get there, and maybe restaurants, cafe will be open there. But people not going to live in those cities. People going to live in the future cities, net cities, where 80,000 people can live together without driving any car and get in matter of minutes like any parts of the city and pretty much walk everywhere.
I don't know how I feel about that because that is one of the arguments that we had with our critics because the Lever House is so special. Nobody wants to touch it.
Okay.
That's why it's still standing because nobody wants to touch it. And it's like, I understand it's a historic building, but we need to reuse the space. And so that is always an argument between the older generation and the newer generation because we always want to reuse and change what's existing. And they're like, leave it. It's history. You need to leave it. And we're like, no, we need to make it into the future. So that is always a constant, it's always a thing. So
yeah, thank you so much. It was a very interesting conversation, Mary. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm glad to have you today here in the studio.
Thanks.